Irvin Wesley Elliott Jr., born 1925, couldn't find any sources on whether he's alive or dead. African-American organic chemist. Irvin Wesley Elliott Jr. is known for his development of simple procedures that can be used to synthesize complex molecules with specific three-dimensional structures. He has used these procedures to prepare a series of related alkaloid compounds. He has also helped to educate the next generation of chemists, with over 35 of his former students or laboratory assistants going on to receive doctoral degrees. Born in Newton, Kansas on October 21st, 1925, Wesley was the middle child and only son of Irwin and Leota Jordan Elliott. His father worked for the Santa Fe Railroad, which ran through the town. Two incidents in Newton's childhood led him toward chemistry. First, his older sister complained that her high school chemistry textbook was difficult to understand. Elliott, a freshman at the time, spent the Christmas holiday reading the entire text. It fascinated him. The second incident occurred the next year in a speech class where he had to present a talk on what field he wanted to enter. Though his parents were encouraging him to study law, the information on lawyers had been taken by another student. He found information on pharmaceutical chemistry available and chose this field as the subject of his talk instead. Soon money he earned over the summers was being used to purchase glassware and basic chemicals for experiments. He bought an elementary organic chemistry textbook and the laboratory manual that went with it. Elliott set up a laboratory in his basement where he not only amazed his friends, but had an accidental explosion or two as well. Right after high school, he entered the University of Kansas to begin his studies. He was expected to be drafted as World War II was in progress, but his nearsightedness prevented him from joining the armed forces. His college years were greatly influenced by the segregationist practices that pervaded the South. Joining the university track team, Elliott entered and won many intramural events, but was prevented from competing in intercollegiate competitions because of the athletic conference's policies. He and the other members of his track team, most of whom were white, campaigned to integrate the athletic conference. Though this did eventually happen, it occurred too late for Elliott to compete. Housing at the University of Kansas was also segregated, and the school provided no dormitories for black students. As a sophomore, some of his white friends convinced the other students to let him move into a student-owned house with them. This was the start of interracial housing at the school, and this precedent eventually convinced university administrators to open the dormitories to black students. For his work on improving relations between races, he was awarded a William A. White Hillel Foundation grant. In chemistry, Elliott found a mentor in Calvin van der Werf, one of his professors. Wesley completed an undergraduate project with van der Werf involving stereoisomers, two compounds that have exactly the same formula and bonds, but are mirror images of each other, like right and left hands. Van der Werf convinced Elliott to attend graduate school at the University of Kansas. Once he had completed his Bachelor of Science degree. There, Elliott chose William E. McGowan as his research advisor, who introduced him to methods for synthesizing heterocyclic compounds. These compounds contain rings that are composed of carbon plus another element such as oxygen or nitrogen. To pay for school, Elliott worked at the Eastman Kodak Company over the summer of 1948, where he became interested in X-ray diffraction, a method for determining the three-dimensional structure of molecules. After earning his master's degree, Elliott took a job as a chemistry instructor at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The university had no laboratory facility, so he set up his own laboratory in his office using a small grant from the Carnegie Foundation. He was trying to complete some of the synthesis work he had begun at the University of Kansas. After one of his experiments exploded and destroyed his office, the Southern University refused to renew his contract. One good thing did come out of his time in Louisiana, however. He met his future wife there, Joanne Louise Curl. Unable to find a full-time position, Elliott returned to the University of Kansas and began work on his doctoral degree under McGowan. At the same time, he was working at the Kansas Geological Survey Laboratory to support himself. His former professor, Vanderwerf, received a grant to synthesize lubricating oil compounds and hired Elliott to carry out the work. This work became part of his graduate project and allowed him to complete his doctorate in 1952. His marriage to Joanne took place as soon as he graduated, and Elliott moved to Florida A&M College in Tallahassee, where his wife had a position teaching German. He was soon made chairman of the chemistry and physics department and was given responsibility for selecting laboratory equipment for a new science building. He selected advanced equipment such as he had learned about at Eastman Kodak. At the same time, he remained involved in social problems, participating in a bus boycott which ended segregated buses in Tallahassee. In 1957, Dr. Elliott was awarded a National Science Foundation Faculty Fellowship, which allowed him to spend a year at Harvard University working with Peter Yates. Here he continued investigating the structure of pure organic compounds. Receiving a grant from the Petroleum Research Fund, he moved to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where he inherited samples of natural compounds collected by Percy Julian. Through this collection, he became interested in the synthesis of natural products, particularly alkaloids, such as morphine and other polycyclic compounds. While continuing his research at Fisk, Elliott served as a visiting professor at both Howard University in 1964 and Wellesley College in 1984. He also spent time at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark in 1974, where he studied methods that used electricity to carry out particular steps in a chemical synthesis procedure. He applied these methods when he returned to Fisk and developed new procedures for synthesizing certain alkaloids. One compound his group synthesized and patented may be active against a virus that causes AIDS. Elliott served as chairman of the chemistry department at Fisk from 1960 until his retirement in 1995. In 1996, he was elected professor emeritus and honored by the National Organization of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers as their Teacher of the Year. He and his late wife have 2 children, Derek and Karen. Citations are in the description.